Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack and Dave here, bringing you that podcast that has been long coming and has finally made its return. So, everybody, if you have been waiting for us to release the podcast again, do smash that like button, everybody. Let's try to get this maybe to 100 likes if we can, especially if you have been waiting a long time for this return. But I'm looking forward to this, Dave, because it's a nice little time for us to sit down together, sort of maybe kind of discuss anything that maybe slipped through and maybe debates or we just didn't get
Mhm.
the chance to talk about also as well. I mean, we are post bubble blower derby. We are post hammer thrower defeat, Dave. And we also have some things to gloat about with that and maybe some good talking points that we probably got from that sort of match as well. And this is even also an opportunity, I think, to even get a sneak preview about what we might even be talking about with other guests this week on the channel. So everybody, if you do enjoy this podcast, like I said, smash that like button, please. But Dave, how are we? Good to see you, and good to have the return.
No, look, I do enjoy these podcasts, Jack. I mean, it's me and you. We just get to have a discussion together on some of these subjects, which I like, and some people out there like, judging by comments on the previous ones. But as far as me, I do apologize if I sound like the Irish Sean Dyche today. A lot of people said that to me yesterday, and people I've been on the phone with today actually because of my voice. But don't worry, I'm in good spirits. I'm absolutely buzzing. We bet the bubble enthusiasts. Pep in my step, back inside top four. And we've got a chance to create a points buffer because Newcastle have a cup final this weekend. We play Chelsea and their next game, I think, is Man City. We have a chance to create a little bit of buffer inside the top four. So I'm in a good mood, Jacko.
And don't worry, Dave's not interested in the Everton job or the Burnley job either, with the Sean Dyche voice, everybody. But let's get into it. Let's have a good discussion. And the first thing that we're going to get stuck into is that Spurs takeover stories just don't seem to be going away. And for me, it is something that I think is actually, whether you feel like it's always some sort of PR campaign by Spurs, if you think it's never going to happen, sort of thing. What I would maybe just bring up is the fact that the stories just don't seem to be kind of quieting down. They keep coming up. There seems to be stories here and there, and even Dan Kilpatrick just recently, everybody has come out and said that Daniel Levy has held talks with several interested parties in recent months, and there's a feeling that he and Joe Louis are open to a deal. However, they are undecided whether to sell Spurs outright or maybe seeking a minority partner or maybe just doing nothing at all. I do feel like, though, that this is consistent with what we've heard before in the past with the likes of the rumors, maybe with the QSI investment, also even just the Jam Najafi investment has just come through. It has maybe seemed that, these rumors, these sort of stories don't seem to be really going away. And we've also even heard everything, like I said, from full takeovers in the case of Najafi to minority interest in the case of the QSI investment. And even just recently, speaking of which, of the QSI investment, there was an article from Jonathan Northcroft of Times Sport, and he said the Qatari investors could still bid for Spurs, with QSI considering making an offer for Spurs if Lewis and Levy were to signal that they are open to selling a minority share. So whether they really want to believe it or not, the Spurs fan base, whether even, the Spurs club itself, want to believe, the rumors or not, they don't seem to be going away. The interest doesn't seem to be going away, Dave. So what do you make of that fact that it feels like, months down the road and we're still getting articles here and there, still getting, rumors of Daniel Levy talking with so-and-so and such and such. Do you feel like maybe there is some sort of legs behind this all?
Look, Jack, where I'm at with it, first of all, I want to say I
Uh-huh.
know the club came out and made a statement saying that, the club isn't up for sale, this, that, and the other. But there's no smoke without fire. And if they weren't looking for some sort of investment or looking to sell on the club, they wouldn't have met with Forest Lee in the Bahamas last year. They wouldn't have engaged with talks with QSI. And these latest ones, for me, I think the reason why they came out with that statement is because I believe they've got a valuation on the club that if someone was to reach it, they would sell it. And for me, I think the reason why they turned it down or put out that strong worded statement that it's not up for sale is purely to show people that if you're interested in buying Tottenham, come with serious money. But look, you've got to look at reasons why Enoch wouldn't want to sell, but they're also the same reasons that make the club attractive to prospective buyers or prospective investments. So let me go through a list of them here, Jack. First of
Mm-hmm.
all, Spurs' profile in terms of world football. The fact that the club is based in London, which is England's capital city. They've got multiple revenue streams coming in that doesn't rely on football revenue, like, TV rights, season tickets, and the multiple revenue streams they have outside of football is the Skywalk, Spurs Play, NFL, rugby,
Correct.
sponsors, boxing events, which, like I said, means they're not reliant on football. There's still a huge stadium naming rights that can still happen. We're also inside the Big Six in the most attractive and most profit-generating league in world football. Brand new stadium, state-of-the-art training complex, real estate and development rights that are available through the ownership, which means planning permission for hotels and all these other things, which means, they can build them and take in revenue off them. So for me, there are reasons why they wouldn't sell, but there are also reasons which makes the club attractive. Now, like I said, with the rumors. So you've had Jam the Jaffe, supposedly preparing a blockbuster bid, QSI and Forest Lee, all within the space of 1 year, really. Forest Lee was last December. Mm-hmm. So all within the space of a short space of time, which means they are, in my opinion, looking to maybe at some sort of investment or looking to sell. Now,
and just quickly, Dave, didn't you tell me as well that Ben Jacobs sort of doubled down as well, maybe on the rumors that Daniel Levy has been speaking to powerful people that would be obviously interested in, buying Spurs, and he clearly has been having discussions, whether they've been very serious or not. They still are sort of discussions, even preliminary kind of, thoughts and, kind of just discussions between him and some powerful parties that clearly would have interest in owning a football club or, in fact, a Premier League club. I think you said Ben Jacobs, it was, when it came to the QSI investment, he said something more or less to the point that even if QSI don't come in, Daniel Levy's still clearly meeting with people by the looks of things.
Exactly. And this is where these rumors come out with no smoke without fire, Jack. But look, let's also get into reasons why they might look to sell, Jack. So, Lewis is getting older. Does he want the problem at Tottenham Hotspur? You've got the protests. Kane and Son are coming to an end. You've got to look to replace them. Lack of trophies. The scouting department is in shit. You've got the youth academy not producing anything and got big problems in there. Major investments still needed in the squad. And when you look at it as well, prices that are all-time high in football, never been higher, and I'm not sure they can probably get much higher either. So it's kind of like at a point where, do they want to cash in on the football club knowing that they might not get any more for it? Because we've got to remember, Roman Abramovich wanted to buy Tottenham. They didn't want to let him. And there was an Asian businessman back in 2008 that Pino Sahavi tried to broker talks between the club and that Asian businessman, and they didn't want to sell. And back then, I think the club was valued at something like 400 million, and look at the valuation on it now and what they've built. So for me, I think football prices for clubs, players, wages, etc., it's all at an all-time high. Could they maybe look to cash in? Because we've got to remember, these are finance guys. So they've probably looked at it, and there's probably not much more scope for the football, to get much more expensive or the prices to get much more higher. So I think it is at a point where they've probably set maybe a 4.55 billion. I don't know why, but in my head, I'm thinking more 7.5 billion. And then if that sort of offer comes in, I think they'll sell. You got to remember, they're money guys at the end of the day. And if there's not much more scope for football to grow in terms of finances, they probably will look to cash out. The problem we have, Jack, is that it does look like that Daniel Levy wants to stay on in his role regardless of who the owners are.
So what are they more interested in, Dave? Are they more interested in that full buyout, or are they more interested in like a minority investment that sort of could help them a little bit, right? Just takes a bit of the burden away from them, takes a bit of the responsibility of some of the finances away from them, but they still have a lot of control? Or do you think they're looking for that sweet buyout, do you think?
I'll be honest. Look, I'm not a real financial guru, but I'm not sure what the benefits of a minority investment would be to these guys. The only benefits you'd have is when it comes to dividends paid out to shareholders. So I'm not sure what benefits they'd get from a short term or a sort of like a minority investment. For me, when you look at two of the people looking to buy the club. Jam the Jaffe wanted to buy it outright. Forrest Lee wanted to buy it outright. I think it would make more sense for someone to come in and buy it outright with the plan and permissions, with the extra revenue streams that are not solely reliant on Tottenham's performance in the Premier League or the Champions League, although that does help. So for me, I think it makes sense for any guy with that sort of money to come in and buy Tottenham rather than a minority share.
Yeah. I feel like they're probably looking maybe more for kind of the sweet buyout, because even, guys like Daniel Levy, Enoch, they've kind of taken Spurs from what was originally, I'm not sure the original evaluation of the club was at when they had first taken it over, but let's be honest, they have absolutely catapulted the investment and not the investment, the evaluation that it is at now. And obviously a lot of that has to do with all the money that they put into the real estate, all the money that they put into all these other revenue streams that do seem to boost their own evaluation, it looks like, into the club, which sort of then maybe leads me into the fact that if anybody were to come in for a full buyout of Tottenham Hotspur, and that means then buying out a lot of their real estate and a lot of their, revenue streams that they have built from the beginning, and also have, chosen to, make their sort of staple, kind of, thing is that they have these revenue streams that all these other clubs don't. It feels like then if anybody were to come in for the full buyout, they would have to be interested in that as well. It's not like they would just find that to be, like some silly added bonus that they're not really that interested in. You would think like if they really were to go after Tottenham Hotspur, clearly they are interested in those extra revenue streams, because they might as well save themselves some money. If they weren't, they could go after Man United, they could go after other clubs that we all know that really just sort of have just football matches at the end of the day in their stadium and really only concentrate pretty much on that. There isn't really the opportunity yet, or there really hasn't been the infrastructure there for that sort of extra revenue to be made. And so it does feel like if all they want maybe is some, foreign entity from the US to Russia to, wherever in the world, honestly, were to take over, a football club, and all they wanted was just to improve the team, and just kind of, make a really successful football club that maybe boost their own brand, boost their own image a little bit. I don't really feel like they would need to invest in Spurs, because that would just feel like you're kind of overpaying for kind of just a simple thing that you want out of it. It feels like if anybody were to pay for Spurs, you're paying a hefty fee. And it feels like you would have to be interested, or most likely you would be interested in all those extra revenue streams that clearly you are paying for, because that's why the evaluation in the first place is so expensive, is because of all those revenue streams that Spurs would be giving up. So while I would say that I think it seems like the majority of the fan base do really want, Enoch and Levy to sell up, I would be interested in the fact that it feels like the next investor that is willing to throw up that kind of cash, I would imagine, is also very interested in hosting Beyonce concerts and NFL games and all that sort of thing. I don't think they're going to shy away from that.
Well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't they be interested in it, Jack? It's what makes Tottenham so attractive.
Makes them a unique investment compared to the others. Yeah.
You look at the guys buying Man United, right? They'll have to pump money into the stadium. They'll have to pump money into Carrington. But they also have to pump money into the playing squad, which means they're sort of shelling out a lot of money, right? Whereas at Tottenham, they don't have to pump in as much money because there's multiple other revenue streams coming in, right? So that's what makes Tottenham so much more attractive than all these other clubs, is because they don't have to put as much as their own money into Tottenham as they would when they go after some of these other clubs.
I think you're totally right. And also, even in the case of Todd Bowley, look at what he inherited with Chelsea. As much he's invested a ton of money into the playing squad. I believe I could be wrong on this, but I've heard that Stamford Bridge has been needed, repair, and has been needing a new stadium for quite some time. So even though he's invested a lot of money in the playing squad, there's still a lot of other issues that he needs to attend to. And you could say in the case of Spurs, even though they are paying a lot of money up front, it feels like with Spurs, there may be those kind of problems down the road that they don't exactly have to deal with that maybe they would with other clubs, like, like you said, redoing the stadium, re-updating it, or even building a new one outright in some cases, or like you said as well, maybe a new training ground, other things like that, that maybe, do also are kind of secret, or maybe sometimes, prices or, kind of costs down the road that sometimes maybe owners are kind of a little reluctant to pay because it's not really, something you want to do. It's not something that you want to kind of take on. Whereas with Spurs, even if it's expensive, maybe it's kind of all been done for you kind of ahead of time. And so there is that benefit, maybe, that if you're not all that interested in building a new stadium, not all that interested in building a new training ground, you kind of just want to take a club that sort of has a lot of the infrastructure built for you. Maybe that's sort of also the interest, maybe, for some people as
But
well.
see, with the planning rights that come with the ownership, it opens you up to two things. You could get an owner that walks in here and sees Tottenham as, an amazing opportunity. It's got all the infrastructure surrounding it. Just pump money into the playing squad. Let's go on and win trophies and dominate English football.
Right.
Or you could get a guy who looks at it and says, okay, multiple revenue streams. I'll do a bit like what they're doing at the minute, try and keep Tottenham self-sustainable. But what I really want is that planning permission in London. It's capital city. Real estate in London is not cheap. Like, there's really small apartments that go for like 300,000. You know what I mean? It is not cheap real estate in London. And what I don't want is them to have their main focus on that real estate and the opportunities that it gives them to be able to build developments and stuff like that in London. And that's what their main objective is. And that's why I say to people,
the latter, I think, is more likely to happen. It be that sort of case, but I could be wrong.
This is what I say to people, like, although most of the fan base wouldn't mind seeing change and, taught the owners to sell the football club. What is important is we can't jump at the first offer. We have to make sure as a fan base that their vision aligns with ours. That has to be the utmost important and the first thing we have to consider.
Just
Does their
quickly,
vision line with ours?
Just quickly on that, Dave, and we want to have this be a conversation, everybody. So you're probably mad that Dave's making all these good points here and Jack keeps interrupting him. But on Talk Sport, I saw that the Man United communications, like for the fans, right? The communications, for the supporters trust or whatever it was for Man United was on Talk Sport, and he was kind of discussing, how they have sent this open email, this open letter to anyone that is interested in buying Man United, like what they want, what they stand for. Do you feel like, I imagine that the supporters trust would be doing something similar, you would hope?
Oh, I think they would. They would. But look, like I'm saying, it's one thing letting the supporters trust take ownership, and I understand it because they're sort of the spokesperson for the fan base to the club, the sort of communication that you have to go through. But just as fans in general, if you don't agree with it, because you don't know whether the wider fans will agree with the supporters trust on, whether they align on the same vision and the same way of thinking. So as a wider fan base, we've just got to make sure it's what we want, because there's no point of going through the struggles we've gone through since the Champions League final and stuff like that in order for it to continue when we've been given hope that, we're finally going to see a footballing product worthy of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, worthy of the training complex and stuff like that. So, it's just as fans in general, we've got to make sure it's what we want going forward. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I think, we've covered a lot of what I really wanted to say on that. And I imagine it's not something going away. David, is there any points that maybe you wanted to also get off your chest there? Yeah, I think we covered it there, everybody. The next bit of one, and probably some people have been looking forward to this one from myself, and it is, in fact, last opportunity, everybody. I'm a very nice guy. I've been kind with letting people back on the Højbjerg train. It's a very slow moving train. It's not one of those, German trains or Japanese trains that, move very quickly and on time and everything, that move ruthlessly. I'm always willing to take on some extra passengers, some extra lovers, some extra appreciators. But with me, Dave, with Emerson here, I just feel like it's kind of last stop, or, it's kind of it's last chance to get on board. It feels like at this stage, because I don't know with you, like, he's starting to really prove a lot of people wrong, and he's done it more consistently now, because a lot of people in the past have said, just one game, he'll follow it up with a stinker. He's not really done that. Looks like maybe 4 games now, maybe in a row here, that he's put in some really solid performances for the likes of Spurs. I've also argued in the past, everybody, that he's made good performances in the past that I've seen. But for me, Dave, kind of, it's almost like maybe we go through a bit of a story arc here, kind of, when it comes to it, because my sort of appreciation of Emerson, or even my defense of Emerson, didn't even come from like a huge appreciation. It actually just came from the fact that I really always had seen that I felt like he was a much better option for Spurs than Matt Doherty ever was. And even actually kind of early on, kind of felt like he was doing a lot of things that a lot of us were frustrated with Aurier, he simply wasn't doing anymore, and he was kind of there to come in to fix a lot of that sort of silliness, rash challenges, boneheaded, sort of decisions and things like that. Yes, he obviously was maybe like a lot of people maybe we'll get onto later, harshly sort of criticized him for, maybe was lacking some other things. But I do feel like he was brought in to maybe be that upgrade originally on Matt Doherty, on the likes of Aurier. And that was kind of my whole defense of him in the beginning, just where it clearly just came from. It wasn't really this fact that I love Emerson originally or anything like that. It was just me trying to point out, like, this is why Spurs brought in a guy like him. This is also maybe why he is playing ahead of a Matt Doherty, because even though a lot of people might have disagreed with me in the past, maybe still disagree with me now about whether Matt Doherty is better than Emerson. Clearly, the likes of Jose did not fancy Matt Doherty very much when he got brought in. The likes of Nuno, who even played, with Matt Doherty in the past, didn't even, fancy him over Emerson. And also the likes of Antonio Conte, as we know, has always favored, for the most part, Emerson over the likes of Matt Doherty. Sure, Matt Doherty had that 6-game spell last season. He absolutely tore that apart. And really unluckily, he picked up that injury. But it just feels like ever since then, Antonio Conte has not really acknowledged him as the same type of player. He clearly has even come out and said, since that injury, Matt Doherty is not the same player. And it's not the same guy that I was, able to, get the best out of in those last 6 games. Another quick point, though, too, is that even when Conte first took over the job, he played Emerson ahead of the likes of Matt Doherty. He didn't fancy Matt Doherty right away. He actually felt like Matt Doherty needed to earn his spot ahead of the likes of Emerson. And all these sort of kind of trainers, managers, Dave, that have favored Emerson ahead have been called stupid, have been called, crazy, like, a lot of, kind of insults have even been made, of the managers and people that sort of have tried to rationalize maybe why does Emerson get picked ahead of these players. A lot of people have just said, I simply don't understand it. Why is it that, Doherty isn't playing ahead of him? Why is it that Jed Spence isn't playing ahead of him? And my whole defense originally just came from the fact of, I don't know, I'm just going to try to see it through their eyes. I'm going to try to see it, through the manager's eyes when it comes to why they're getting picked in the first place. And I have plenty more points I want to make in this huge, kind of rant here, Dave, but maybe I'll let you in for like, a second here. I mean, do you remember it as well? That's where I don't want to, make up my own story here, Dave. But I mean, do you remember that's how it went? Was, originally it was just me trying to rationalize why maybe Conte and Nuno and managers like that were picking Emerson ahead of the other competitors at right back.
First of all, is there anything better than Jack going off on
thesis?
I absolutely love it. No, because you know what, Jack? You don't really stand your ground on too much or really assert your points across on too much, maybe the way I would. But when you do and you come right, I absolutely love it because you sort of rub it in without rubbing it in. I absolutely love it. It's brilliant. Second of all, congratulations quickly to Emerson as well, expecting a baby boy with his boyfriend. You seen that in the celebration yesterday when he asked the ball boy for an extra ball, give me that, put it under the top, suck the thumb, so congratulations. And again, I wonder, Jack, is this maybe contributing to Emerson's upturn in form, which is maybe something we'll get onto in a minute.
Great Valentine's Day, perhaps.
Because having a child gives you a complete different outlook and perspective on life and makes you more driven than when you don't have one. And that's just knowing, many parents will tell you that. So I wonder if that's maybe what is contributing to Emerson being so consistent and, driven lately. But look, to answer your question, Jack, I was another one that, I've always stated, Emerson has always tried to do the right things. You look at someone like Matt Doherty, always constantly shirking responsibility, passing the ball inside. But it's not what Conte wanted from his wingbacks. He wants his wingbacks to get forward, contribute to the attack and play. And Emerson always done that. He always tried to do the right things. And I get people were upset with his composure in the final third, which, by the way, yesterday, that was some composure. He just rolled it in, nonchalant as anything. That was fantastic. And I get that. But, we accepted someone like Matt Doherty shirking responsibility time and time again in Tottenham jersey. No song sung about him. People still loved him, this, that, and the other, and accepted the
Correct.
mediocrity. But for some reason, when it came to Emerson, that shot that I think it was him that had it against Bournemouth that ended out in the car park, got ridiculed for it. He was cheered by the home fans when he was taken off against Leeds last November in around the same period. But yet the guy just ignored all the noise, Jack. Ignored it all. Continued offering himself going forward and defensively, non-stop.
Yeah.
Paid what was it, £1 million to sort of get his mentality in check and stuff like that, which people mocked him for. But he's come through all of that adversity. Even bringing in Pedro Porro, 40 million. Most of us expected Porro to walk straight in. And the guy rises to the occasion. For me, it's sort of like a true underdog story. But Jack, another thing you can also tell with Emerson, very, very popular in the squad. You go back to the Flair celebration against Arsenal last season where he held the Flair up. We were loving it. Players were loving it. You look at the celebrations yesterday, how quick everybody was to get across and celebrate with him, which shows how much he's liked. I'm going to get on to two of the other South Americans that celebrated with him a little bit later. But, this is a guy, we've got to understand. Kyle Walker didn't hit the ground running when he first came to Tottenham. He was loaned out. He was given time to get used to the Premier League, develop him. We brought him back, gave him an opportunity, and he pushed on. But one thing Kyle Walker gave down that right-hand side, and by the way, he wasn't the best in the final third either. I think people have short-term memories when it comes to that. But one thing Kyle Walker did is consistently offer himself going forward and defensively. And Emerson was the same thing. Always a winning runner going forward. Even if it means he might not get the ball, you still see him making overlapping runs. You look at him defensively, he's always there in the right position. Credit to the guy for coming through all that adversity, Jack.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You've got to realize that sometimes, okay, I get it, we're frustrated with him in the final third, but, we've got to be more clever when we look at who he's compared to, and stop giving people like Matt Doherty a free excuse because he stat pads and passed the ball 5 yards inside. At least Emerson does the right thing and take the risks. And that's why I think me and you have always sort of been fond of him, because it's like, well, he is willing to take a risk. He is willing to try something. He still does the right things constantly, even if it's not working out.
You wouldn't call him a selfish player.
Constantly trying to do the right things, unlike some others we've had in that position over the last few years.
Certainly wouldn't call him a selfish player whatsoever. I mean, even if you've called him worse than that, you definitely couldn't call him that trait. You brought up so many good little nuggets there, I think, Dave. But I think one part that I wanted to maybe bring up too, before I bring up some of the stuff that, like you said, maybe he's been accused of or had to go through, but like you maybe rightfully brought up, right? His mentality is somehow, prevailed in all of it. He's been able to surpass all of it. For me, though, like where I've always kind of come on it, and maybe people sort of disagree with me on this. I think it's just a matter of taste, so I'll happy to admit this. But for me, Dave, I feel like a fullback needs to have some pace, or at least, that sort of quick burst of acceleration. And it comes to either when going forward or when it comes to, defensive. It's one of those positions where I know you and I have often said, right, the best footballers do not rely on, that bit of athleticism. They don't rely on their pace. They can rely on their good touch. They can rely on their intelligence and how they see the game, how they see the pitch and everything like that. I feel like the fullback position, Dave, its step principle still applies, but it's still a position where I just feel like you can't necessarily do, till you're 35 or something like that. You need to have those physical characteristics, maybe more so than in other positions. I actually think I do think you need to have that ability to just get up and down. And this is kind of a really key point I want to make here, is that I feel like nowadays in the modern game, a lot of people really prefer the fullbacks that, of course, are very attack minded and very attack focused. You look at Alphonso Davies, Joao Cancelo, Teo Hernandez over at, Milan, and all these guys. But I feel like they are exceptional at kind of doing actually what I think personally is necessary. And that's kind of doing both sides of it, though, is that they are very keen on going forward, but they still, most of those guys make a very good concerted effort at also coming back and also making a defensive effort and getting back. Whereas you look at a guy like maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold this season, who's at fullback, who clearly doesn't want to defend, clearly has no sort of desire or urge to defend. And I know, Dave, you'll know what I mean here, is actually, in fact, what I think Emerson has that probably fullbacks in the past that we feel like probably lacked, especially, I would say, Aurier and Matt Doherty is actually that sort of that ability, that urge to want to defend, that desire to defend, right? That desire to make a challenge, that desire to get stuck in, that desire to make, a big clearance, to save your team, to defend crosses, to be able to also stop crosses. And these are kind of just, I know, a lot of defensive characteristics, but that's just maybe how I see the game. And that's why I sort of prefaced all this with saying this is just a matter of taste. But for me, I feel like we have time and time again been kind of sort of exposed in those fullback areas for maybe having poor defensive, sort of fullbacks, guys that don't seem to be very good, actually. I even think fundamentally in those one-on-one sort of positions. You remember last season, even seasons before, how many times Matt Doherty is just showing his guy inside without even making an attempt to try to show him down the byline or try to show him down the outside. These are things I even noticed and picked up on right away with Emerson, is that some of his sort of like defensive fundamentals are much better than what we had previously, where he's always trying to show his guy down the outside. And even after that, he tries to, block the cross, and he tries to make, a concerted effort to make life difficult for his winger. You don't really see him getting mixed and tossed about and, sent, flying directions. And he always seems to make life difficult for his, opposition winger. And that's just something that, I don't know, Dave, I've been kind of crying out for some time here, is just having a more defensive fullback, a more defensive, sort of guy. And coming back originally to the first argument, it was the point he was brought in here in the first place, I think, was to be that more defensive minded type wingback, that not even wingback, fullback at the time, that could help us out and not be as much of a liability as Aurier and Matt Doherty were in the past. And that's another thing I like about Emerson as well, that people maybe have chosen to ignore.
Yeah, look, I think first and foremost, whether you're right
Because he
back,
was accused in the past of being a bad defender. A lot of people said he used to be a bad defender, and I never found that to be true. I always thought he was light years ahead of them in defense.
Look, I think the difference between someone like him, Matt Doherty, I would even say as far as maybe Kieran Trippier and Serge Aurier is, you can't fake wanting to defend, right? You have to have a passion for it.
Yeah.
You have to be willing. In fact, you have to sort of enjoy being hit with the ball, putting your body on the line, taking that, and you're like, yeah, I love it, give me more. You've got to have a passion of, wanting to, make that challenge and take the ball off the striker's toe. It has to be, you have to have a real passion for it. You can't fake it. You cannot fake it. And I think when you look at some of the signings we've had in that positions, Matt Doherty, people may not know this, but earlier on in his career, he was more of a right winger, sort of a striker. It's only when he sort of, came true that he sort of was converted to a fullback / wingback. He doesn't have that natural passion, desire, and everything else to defend. Same as Kieran Trippier or Serge Aurier. But you look at Emerson, he's not great going forward, but he's defensively first. And he has that passion. He has that hunger. He has that want, that desire. You look at, he's one of our best headers in the ball back there in terms of clearance. The sliding tackles and the tackles he puts in. He
even with the headers yesterday, Dave, it's almost like he's trying to beat his own vertical leap, record on some of those. Like he's almost like kind of a bit of a housery, like he's just jumping up way too high even to do it. Like he's almost showing off on some of them.
But even look at the figure he goes in with some of them slide tackles. Like, as a defender, I love a defender who wants to take the ball, but also sees the opportunity to take the man with that and not get a booking. And Emerson has that in his locker. He has that aggressive nature as well. And you need that. You need that. And that's why we don't have as many problems down the right-hand side defensively as we do through the middle or down the left-hand side, because we've got two players on that side who have a passion for defending. Yeah. They're sick. They enjoy getting hit with the ball. Them scoring a goal, or the equivalent of them scoring a goal, is making that challenge, taking out the player. Yeah. They have that hunger for defending compared to the rest of the players that play across that back line. And that's what, for me, separated Emerson from a Doherty. Doherty didn't really want to do defending, but then say, okay, so you want to play going forward, but then you keep passing the ball inside. Whereas Emerson doesn't. Emerson still offers himself, still does the right thing. I think that's why I've always liked Emerson. And I could have sat here easily and said, look, I'm Irish. No, I want Matt Doherty in there because he's Irish, this, that, and the other. But I was never going to do it because for me, Emerson always showed more than what someone like Matt Doherty did.
I also just last little point here is I just, on his ability going, and defensively and everything, I just think he's always had that urge and that willingness to get up and down. That is, I think, always and always will be and always has been the nature of the fullback position is to get up and down and be one of the most in shape players in the team, because you have to be that outlet going forward. You have to be that guy that's keeping the width. And also, you even saw yesterday making runs in behind if need be to stretch the defense. But then you also need to be, after making that run in behind, that might be an unselfish run just to stretch the play. You need to be there sprinting back, in order to catch up with the winger in case there's a counterattack. It's just the nature of the position that you just need to be able to, I think, really run your ass off almost every single match. And I feel like Matt Doherty in that 6-game spell, I was actually seeing that from him. I felt like he was, doing both sides of the game quite well, but then it just felt like he just lost it, especially after the injury. It felt like he really did lose that side of like wanting to make runs in behind the defense, trying to be a nuisance, to the opposition, fullback or the opposition winger, also making, concerted effort to track back and, get stuck in that way. It felt like he was just being always way too careful about when to make his runs forward, when to, maybe track back defensively. It felt like he was always keeping an eye on a winger because he was so afraid of, them getting in behind him. Whereas Emerson, like, you'll see him, Dave, I even do the animations, the breathing animations when he's getting up and down the pitch. And that's what I love about him as well. Is he'll make like a powerful, unselfish run just to stretch the play, just to make a defender have to take us a bit more seriously when we're on a counterattack. And I just feel like even those things I was missing from players like Matt Doherty, especially Serge Aurier. I feel like we were missing that. There were times when that guy just didn't seem to be asked, to do anything, in a game. And so these are just things that I just feel like Emerson has not been praised for in the past, and maybe now he's starting to. But another thing just quickly is he has been accused of, though, Dave, and he has received, a lot of abuse. And I just don't really understand that compared to maybe the players before with Ndombele, who, took a real, piss out of the shirt. You look at Lo Celso, who pretty much just outright just said he'd rather play for Argentina than Spurs, and really made more of an effort to do so, and maybe more of an obvious effort. And really, I don't think either did much else, then, maybe just prioritize himself for his national side, and really never really played all that well for Spurs in kind of like consistent periods. Sanchez, I think, too, has kind of just been a laughing stock sort of defender for a long time at Spurs. One of the most expensive defenders we've ever brought into the club, has never really seemed to have like a similar, sort of fan base of hatred towards him, as does Emerson. Same thing with Eric Dyer. Like, it almost seems even taboo to criticize Eric Dyer, like, at times. And also in the case with Serge Aurier, a guy that literally walked out on us at halftime. I feel like that guy even had less of like a culture of hatred, surrounding him than it did with Emerson. And that's one of the other things I never understood. It's not like Emerson ever took the shirt off Dave, stamped on it. Not like he ever, prioritized himself for like some trip to Disneyland or like whatever. You know what I'm trying to say? It just seemed like some of the things he was getting criticized for, and the culture of hatred that was around him, there didn't seem to be much else of it other than maybe footballing reasons or whatever, because it's not like he did what Ndombele, Lo Celso, or Aurier had done in the past either. So that's what's also I found confusing.
I think the reason why, especially with the likes of Sanchez, Dyer, Davies, people like that, is because they're the last
Pochettino era,
along with Kane's son and Lloris, they're the last resemblance of the Pochettino era, which every Spurs fan is very fond of. We're winning most weeks. You could be arrogant with your support for Tottenham. You were proud, with your support for Tottenham as well. But they never really contributed to that sort of overall success. They were always sort of on the periphery of the squad. And I think with Emerson, he came in at a time where people were just fed up with the mess of Tottenham. We were buying dud after dud. So your patience for every new signing that comes in the door gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, right? So I think that's probably why Emerson gets it. But at the end of the day, I would also, maybe to end it off, I would say that the reason why Matt Doherty is gone and the reason why Emerson stayed is because Emerson wants to play. Matt Doherty was scared to play. And there's the two differences, in my opinion. Something I do want to touch on just quickly as well, Jack, is South American influence culture that's sort of developing at Tottenham. And it was more so in the goal celebrations that, I really enjoyed it. I'm sadistic that sort of way. But, the goal celebration, what was it? Richarlison went up when Emerson was over there pointing to his family. Richarlison went up to grab his jersey. Emerson turns around and grabs him by the throat. You know, then you got Romero comes up, gives Emerson a kick up the hole, and then locks horns
Kicked
and
him in
then
the
pushes
ribs.
his head back off his. You know, and then also what that done is you look at Romero and Emerson's rest of the game after that, you know, how aggressive they were in their defending, how much they wanted to help each other, how pumped up they were. It's sort of, I'm not saying it's exactly like what Argentina had the World Cup, but it was sort of starting to develop that with these guys. And I know Richarlison didn't have the greatest game yesterday, but one thing I did like about Richarlison is that even when he lost the ball or we didn't have the ball, he was the first one to go and press and try to win it back. And the amount of times between him and Kane, they made Fabianski kick the ball long. And our defence actually done what they're supposed to when that happens, which is win the first header, we pick it up and we go again. So, you know, I really do like this South American influence, the culture that's starting to build. And I want more of it. Bring me in more. Not someone like Lascelles or Lamelas or people like that. You know, fresh ones with this new modern sort of willingness to play, wanting for the ball, you know, wanting to defend, you know, just wanting to play football with aggressive nature. It's that aggressive. It's almost scary, but it sort of gives me a hard on. I love it.
Yeah, honestly, I embrace it, Dave. I love these, guys that, just seem to just basically go to war out there type of players. And a lot of it just seems to be ringing through some of these South American players, like you rightfully pointed out there. And, I have plenty more I could say on Emerson, but, there's always other opportunities. I got plenty of,
Well, go for it.
I could say a soapbox. I actually just wanted to really just reference maybe Dave just quickly, and I'll really summarize. It was actually just more summarizing what he's gone through, right? I think in the Spurs fan base. And this is maybe just to remind ourselves, right? Because you brought up the mentality of him, and we'll get on to actually some other mentality points with some other players. But he's been accused of, Dave, and has received, plenty of abuse from fans. I think fans have often said that teammates don't want to pass to him, right? Even they said Romero doesn't want to pass to him, even after we just saw that celebration, between the two. They say Romero and Harry Kane. I've even heard fans say that they hate him. We, of course, had the story of FC Barcelona laughing at us for buying him in the first place, which a lot of Spurs fans seem to take a real kick out of and like to reference all the time. I actually found that to be quite sad to use as, a bit of fuel against the guy, because if anything, I think FC Barcelona are quite idiotic to even be laughing at any other club other than themselves for overpaying for a player. Look at what they've done over the last 10 years. They're in a financial mess, financial meltdown, using their own banks and their own country to keep them afloat at the moment. So if anybody should be laughing at overpaying for a player, it should be FC Barcelona, not them laughing at us. And also as well, I think, Dave, he's been basically accused of being everything but, anytime they're saying, oh, he's not even a footballer, and then it's followed by a spew of insults that seem to mock everything from his intelligence to even in some cases his simple faculties, I think, as a human being. And he's also basically had to resort to, I think he deleted his Twitter, turned off his Twitter. Most of his comments on Instagram for a long time were only for people who he followed. And as well, he's just kind of been surrounded by a culture of abuse, of fans even making up songs, that mock him as well. Like, he hasn't even felt comfortable probably around his own fan base, around his own Spurs, crowd. And he somehow, Dave, blocked out all of that noise, blocked out all of that hatred. And like you brought up, has continued to try and try and try and try some more. And it just feels like he has the mentality, Dave, that I'll end off on. He has the mentality that I feel like few possess and many dream they wish they had, because we all like to think that we're tough. We all like to think that we could take that sort of hatred, that sort of negative energy. But I think few can in that sort of way and be able to come out in the way that he has, to be able to come out a completely better person in the way that he has. And so I think, Dave, it's just last chance for people to join the Emerson appreciation chain, and maybe last chance for people to join it. And if they don't want to join it, I'll just leave them at Hater Station.
I think maybe just to summarize as well, yeah, I think, look, you got to get on the Emerson train now. But, I can tolerate someone at least trying and wanting to do the right things and not playing scared, but being bad, rather than someone who is just playing scared, constantly doing the wrong things and pissing me off. And I think we've got to find a difference in that at times, and I think we lacked when it came to Emerson and Doherty between that call, if you want me to be brutally honest. But look, this brings me on to a point I wanted to bring up. Probably wrong timing with the win yesterday, but at the same time, I only got the reports on it this morning, and it's actually sort of a video I actually wanted to put out Saturday. But being honest, there was so much. I was just like, you know what? It's not even. It's not. It'll take me an hour to get through because it angers me so much. But it's the excuse culture at Tottenham, Jack. You know, we just spoke about Emerson, all the hate he's got. Never came out with any excuses. In fact, invested his own money to try and make him better mentality-wise, better footballer. No excuses whatsoever. And he could have came out and said, "Oh, the fans sing songs about me." Didn't bother. Then you look at Son's interview before the game as well, Jack, where Son, you know, basically said, "I'm not looking for excuses." And these are his words. Once again, I want to make it very clear before the match that I'm only blaming myself for the troubles this season. Nobody else. And he could have, and there's a number of things he could have blamed, Jack. He could have blamed the fractured cheekbone. He could have blamed.
He does have more excuses than others would. Like but
he could have also used the energy expended at the World Cup. He could have blamed Conte's system as he wanted to, but he didn't. He came out and took responsibility and ownership of it.
Yeah.
Then you've got someone like Ben Davies, who, look, he had a good game yesterday. I want to get that off the bat very first thing. I want to get that out there. He had a good game yesterday. I'm not slating him over his performance yesterday. But he comes out and he says, "Oh, yeah, well, after the Leicester game, you know, we told a lot of home truths to each other, this, that, and the other." I mean, you go back to the All or Nothing documentary where Ali was mounting in the dressing room and Eric Dyer's like put a name on it. You know, why is it sort of these guys who are the ones that make a lot of mistakes throughout the season that let us down in games? Why are they the ones constantly coming out talking about we need to tell each other home truth? It's not you know, Chinese whispers where everyone sits around in a circle and starts speaking. It's not a social club. We're a football club. You shouldn't need to be told home truths. Sometimes you should be able to walk away from a game and go, "I didn't play well today. Why didn't I play well today?" You should be able to break it down, look for things to improve, and go out there and prove it. You shouldn't constantly need this perpetual cycle of having to tell each other home truths, have this big get-together in the dressing room where everyone's yeah. You know, you shouldn't need to keep happening. You know, and why is it only happening after the Leicester defeat when results went bad last October? You don't hear Kane, Son, you know, people like that who have really led this team over the last few years come out and say this shit, make these excuses, constantly say, "I need other people to tell me home truths," this crap. You know, it's not a good culture to be developing. Then you look at Winks' interview during the week, Jacko.
Good point.
You know, "Oh, I didn't feel respected. I didn't feel wanted," this, that, and the other. Forgetting that the club gave him multiple contracts in his early career. And when he suffered injuries, he was still given contracts. He was given opportunities under multiple managers. You know what I mean? But yet, because, like, and he fails to grasp that respect is earned, especially in football. Respect is earned. It's not given, right? It's football. We're talking about elite level sport here. You earn it through your performances. Then you look at, you know, Hugo Lloris after the Zagreb season, or not last season when we had Jose in charge. You know, we need to be honest with each other, this, that, and the other. Again, another player who's been making a lot of mistakes this year.
But he didn't even come out and do what Sonny did also. When he was asked about some of the mistakes he's made this season, I recall Hugo in that interview made no attempt at all to, you know, take ownership of the mistakes he's made this season and the errors he's made this season. In fact, he even went further to go, "I've looked back, watched them, and knew that I couldn't have done really much better." You know, he kind of said, "I judged the angles, you know, looked at the situation, and I don't think I could have done much better." And it's I don't know, it's just clearly, Dave, polar opposite mentalities with certain players in the squad. There's no just consistency. There's some that are willing to quickly right away blame everything but themselves. And then there are others that are willing to take ownership, even if they actually probably do have some excuses. They're still willing to take ownership. It's just polar opposite mentalities in the squad.
Exactly. And that's why we've got to keep rotating and get some of these weak mentalities out of that dressing room. Because, you know, when the big games come around, we also crumble. Well, why do you think we crumble? Because the mentality is weak. You know, you've got half a squad in there who look at themselves, and you've got other half of a squad who wants to blame everybody else. You know, they blame managers, they blame the repetitive training. I've heard them under Pochettino and Conte blame the training. I've heard them blame, you know, playing in like Nuno or Davies under Nuno, playing out in Vitesse. He blamed their crowd for being too noisy. It's their home stadium, for God's sake. He blamed the weather, same weather for both teams. Blamed the pitch, same pitch for both teams. You know, I'm sick of this excuse culture at Tottenham all the time. I just want people to just come out and take ownership of it. Come out and say, look, I was crap, you know. I looked at myself in the mirror, and that's why I came out and put the performance in I did today. I'm working on these things. Not this whole thing all the time of, oh, we have to sit down and speak to each other. I'm fed up with it. Absolutely fed up with the excuses, Jack. You know, this is what I've been on about mentality for a long time, especially with some of these guys. And the reason why I get on these guys back is because you take this season for just one example. I can go back and grab other examples in other seasons. How many times have they let us down and cost us points and cost us games? You know? And I'm just fed up with the excuses all the time coming out. You know, sometimes you shouldn't need, you know, players to sit there and grill each other and everything. You should just know if you're playing bad. You know, you shouldn't have to wait to a 4-1 defeat where everyone's been atrocious. And it's like, oh, everyone has to talk some home truths. Because if I was Harry Kane in that dressing room, I would have said, okay, we can sit here and talk home truths about the Leicester game today. I was crap, no problem. But what's your excuse for all these other games in October? Some of these other games where you've blatantly made mistakes that's giving away points, but you now want to include me on what's going on right now when you need to take ownership for what you've done consistently this season, Rob.
Yeah, the home truth should be delivered to yourself. Look yourself in the mirror, type of thing. I think you're spot on, Dave. I know we just have some bits of other news. So anything else? Maybe is there another point? Maybe you're not. Yeah.
Just quickly. I don't want to hear from Dyer and Davies either. Why is it them ones who make the mistakes come out to the press and tell these things? Give it a Harry Kane or a Son or someone like that with respect to come out and do it. Why aren't these guys doing it? It's so annoying. Anyway, let's move on because I've got a couple of transfer things I want to talk about. So, Jack, from the Football Insider today, they're basically linking Tottenham with a move for Marco Asensio, whose contract is up at Real Madrid this summer, which means we can go from on a free transfer. Jack, you know, what is he worth going for, first of all? And what would he bring from Tottenham if you do find him worth going for?
I could see why some people are interested in Asensio. He could be an interesting Kulusevski alternative, right, at the right wing position because he offers that creativity. He's probably more creative than he is, you know, pacey or anything like that. I would say, too, Marco Asensio does have a very good shot from distance. Even when he's out of form, he does have a very good hit from distance, I would say, which could be useful to us. But my issue with Marco Asensio, Dave, is that he plays for, I mean, a club like Real Madrid, which of course, if to be able to be there as long as he has been, and to, I think he might even be an academy product, if I'm not mistaken, actually from Real Madrid as well. You have to clearly be a quality player, and he is a quality player. It's just that he's really fallen off the boil for quite some time, and he hasn't really been able to nail down a true starting position in that team. He's seen a lot of players, I think, go ahead of him. He's seen the likes of Gareth Bale, I think also Rodrigo, Vinicius, a bunch of guys been able to sort of kind of just play ahead of him in his time period. And he's scored some fantastic goals, had some fantastic moments for that club. And don't get me wrong, he does have good games. But I just feel like he hasn't really taken it a light at Real Madrid ever. And maybe that worries me that it would mean going to the Premier League, which is a harder league than La Liga at the end of the day. And he plays for a great team like Real Madrid in La Liga, which is an easier league. I feel like I might pass on Asensio. I think I would pass.
Interesting.
He could command huge wages too on a free. He could command huge wages.
Oh, he will. He'll look to take some of what they would have paid in the transfer fee in them wages. And then, like, I think you've got to weigh it up. Will you get the consistency and the performances for the money you're going to be paying this guy? I'd be dubious on that, and I would also stay away. But look, you know, we'll move on to Evan Ferguson. This is in my realms of expertise, of course, because he's a young Irish kid. By the way, I will add he could also play for England. He's not fully capped by Ireland yet. He came off the bench in 2 internationals over the last international breakup against Malta and Norway, but he hasn't been capped in a European Championship qualifier or a World Cup qualifier or anything like that. So there is still chance for England to get their hands on this guy because his mother is English. But Tottenham have been linked with a move for Evan Ferguson to replace Harry Kane. Now, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about Evan Ferguson and why I think this guy will make it in the game. Is first of all, his outlet was a former professional footballer, Barry Ferguson. He played in England. He played with Coventry, Nottingham Forest, a few other clubs, and also played back home here in the League of Ireland. So I think, he will come. He's got family member like the father who can always keep him on the right track, keep him focused, stuff like that. He also came from St. Kevin's Boys over here in Ireland, a club that produced a lot of top players here in Ireland. He also comes from the same club. So when he moved from St. Kevin's, he moves to Bohemians, the same club where Matt Doherty actually went to England from. He made his debut actually at 14 for Bohemians in a friendly against Chelsea, believe it or not, at 14. That's unbelievable. And then, of course, he moved across and signed for Brighton in January 2021. Since then, Potter sort of used him in the early rounds of the cup games. He was taking his opportunity, scored a couple of goals, helping assist and others. But really, since the Zerbi's come in, Jack, De Zerbi really likes this young kid and he keeps playing him. And he's gone on. He's got 3 Premier League goals to his name now. He's still playing some of the cup games, getting involved in there, scoring some goals. And it's now attracting interest from the likes of Tottenham, Chelsea, other top European clubs around. This guy's only 18 years of age.
Wow.
And I think he does have a huge career in the game.
Now, why did De Zerbi like him, Dave?
Why does De Zerbi like him? I think, look, Jack, he's big for his age, first of all. He's strong, he's quick, he's good on the ball, and he's got an eye for goal. I've seen people liking his forward play a bit similar to Haaland. Now, me personally, I think that's a bit drastic and going over the top. But what I would liken him to maybe is more like a Robbie Keane. He's the youngest ever Irish goal scorer to score in the Premier League. He scored before than what Robbie Keane did in the Premier League. And I would like him to someone like Robbie Keane, who I think has the world at his feet. And look, I do think Chelsea probably might come in for this guy as well. And the reason why is because the guy that actually was in charge of bringing him from Ireland to Brighton also moved to Chelsea with Potter. And I know Potter liked this guy as well. So for me, it's one I would keep an eye on. I think the price might go up a bit on this and it might end up taking Tottenham out of the equation. But, I do think this guy can have a good career in the game, a very good career in the Premier League, Jack. You look at someone like Aaron Connolly, who scored against us when we lost, I think, 3-0 to Brighton. Didn't really keep his feet on the ground, got carried away, out partying, drinking, tattoos, the whole lot. Took his eye off his career. I don't think someone like Evan Ferguson would be allowed to, with his father being an ex-professional. So for me, I think whoever buys this kid, you will get a guy who's driven, hungry, and will have this desire to succeed. And this guy will score you goals. Can he be Harry Kane's long-term replacement? Look, I think that's a huge ask, a huge pressure to put on any young kid's shoulders. And you can never really tell because there's so many variables that can happen over the course of their career. But this guy certainly has the potential as well.
He has some attributes. To suggest you could. And, Dave, I love me a big young striker. And that's what I think the game is lacking nowadays. And it's good to see that a kid like Ferguson is coming through, the big striker, the big number 9 like himself, and clearly has a big future, especially if De Zerbi has likened him. All these coaches ahead have likened him, debuts at 14 years old, clearly, has a big, bright future ahead of him. And like you said, just keeps his head down, could find himself well up being maybe Harry Kane's replacement. You never know.
Just quickly on that, I will add, how much are they willing to spend on this guy, or how true is the rumor as well? Because you've got Troy Parrott out on loan, Dane Scarlett out on loan. You've got that guy we just signed from Chelsea. You've got Will Lancashire there as well. Jamie Donnelly coming through as well. So, there's a lot of players in them sort of positions. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any truth to these rumors. But there are rumors out there today.
Well, everybody, smash that like button, please, on your way out. Please leave a comment at any stage at what part that you maybe found interesting, what part you might have found like to be a really good discussion. Feel free to clip it or timestamp it if you like as well. Really would love to see everybody in the comments maybe discussing what we've had to say on this one. Like I said, try to get this one to 100 likes maybe if we can. That would be really gracious of you guys. But I think we'll leave it there. Hopefully get more podcasts out in the time being. Plenty of debate shows lined up for this week and a little bit of a break until the next game. But everybody, as always, from Dave and I, come on, you
Come
Spurs.
on, you Spurs.
And in
In
Conte, I
content we
trust.
trust.